Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah. If you are new here, then welcome, and today's video is a birth story of Freddie. He is my eldest. I have two children. He is my eldest. He turned 2 back in May, and a couple of people have asked me to put a video out on the birth. With both of my pregnancies and births, I was incredibly lucky that they went smoothly. I got exactly what I wanted from my birth plan, so I was extremely lucky. So we shall get going, I suppose. I had a appointment with the midwife on my due date, and she just said to me, I'll give you a sweep. If nothing has started by then, I will give you a sweep, just, you know, for the sake of it. I had no contractions or anything, no niggles, apart from the Braxton Hicks, obviously, and they had started from, I think, about 25 weeks with Freddie anyway. So my midwife appointment was for 9 o'clock, 9:15, I think. So Mark went off to work. Luckily for me, he only worked 10 minutes away, so he went off to work. I just potted around the house, started unloading the dishwasher, sat down to have something to eat, and then the midwife turned up. So obviously let her in. She did the usual checks, blood pressure. She measured my bump, and she said to me, "Oh, you're measuring big." Now, throughout the entire pregnancy, all my midwife appointments, I'd measured exactly for what I was. She said, "Oh, you're measuring at 42 weeks." Now, I'm not a midwife, and I love midwives, they are absolutely brilliant, but I kind of looked at her and was like, it's the way he's lying. You could see from my bump that it was like a triangle, and he always used to do that. He'd kind of like stick his bum up in the air, so he'd obviously be like a V shape, obviously, but upside down, with his bum in the air. And I was like, you can see from the shape of my belly, it wasn't the round, it was like a cone. I was like, so he's obviously in an odd position. But she said, well, I'd rather you went for a scan tomorrow to get his size checked out. So I was like, right, okay. A little bit like deflated that I'd have to go for a scan, because that could then have led to having to have an induction, and which was completely off plan for what I wanted. So then she said, right, okay, I'll give you a sweep, so just hop on the bed. And what I'd done is, from about 30 weeks on my side of the bed, which is this side of the bed, I had put Inco sheets down in case my waters had gone in the night, but because they were so, like what Inco sheets are made of, they were quite warm, and because he's a May baby, it was quite hot, so there was nothing on Mark's side of the bed because he's like a radiator. So I got onto my side of the bed, and she was like, I can't do it from this angle because I'm next to the window, so there's only a small gap between the bed and the window, so she didn't have much room to like manoeuvre. So she said, oh, can we go on this side of the bed? I said, yeah, that's fine, no problem. Obviously, never having a baby before, not really knowing what a sweep was or could do, I had no clue. So I got onto the bed, and I was right on the edge of the bed because our bed's got a little lip on the side, so I could put my feet on there so that I could get in that sexy position. And she tried to give me a sweep, and she said, oh, she said, you're actually 2 to 3 centimetres. So I thought, oh, okay, that's exciting. But I'd done a lot of reading and knew that I could be like that for another week. So I didn't kind of get my hopes up too much. She said, oh, but I can't quite tell properly because I was like balancing my feet on the bed. I was all tense. So she said, shift back a bit, and then if you relax, I can get a proper feel of how far along you are. So I said, right, okay then. So I shifted back a little bit so I was properly on the bed. And she went in again, and she said, oh, you're more like 3 to 4. So I thought, well, that's like the start of labour, surely, because of like 4, I think they say 4 centimetres, and it's like we're standing. I was like, oh. And obviously, because I'd never done this before, I was like, well, I've not got any contractions or anything. And then all of a sudden, it's hard to explain what it felt like, but this feeling of something going pop, and then the whole of the bed was wet, the floor was wet, her feet were wet. She was like, your waters have just broken. I was like, oh. She was like, it's all over the floor, it's all over the bed. And all I thought was, oh my god, the mattress. We can't afford a new mattress. I was like, I need to get it cleaned up. So she said, right, go and sit yourself on the loo for a couple of minutes, because it doesn't come out all at once. She said, go and sit on the loo for a couple of minutes, shove a couple of pads in your pants. She said, and I'll just go downstairs and write your notes up. She said, but your baby will be here within 24 hours. I was like, oh my god. And it was that feeling of, oh, I'm having a baby. And it's such an odd feeling. If you're a first time mum, you get so excited, and you've got this date that you're given, you're pent up on this date, you're counting down, and you're so excited, and then when it actually happens, you're a little bit terrified. Almost like when you're trying to get pregnant and then you take the test and you find out you are pregnant, and you have obviously elation, but then you're like, oh, I'm having a baby. So the first thing I did was ring Mark to say hi. And so this is at 9:30 in the morning, so he's been in work for half an hour. So I rang Mark and was like, hi. He's like, you okay? What's the matter? I was like, you're kind of going to want to come home because my waters are broken. And he was like, oh, okay. I was like, yeah, so you need to come home now. So he was on his way home. The next thing I did was I rang my dad and my stepmom, because my mother-in-law and father-in-law were in work. So I was like, well, I know I'm going to get hold of my dad. So typical of my dad, rang his mobile, no answer. I mean, it's like, why have you got a mobile if you're not going to answer it? But he didn't answer, so like, I'll ring the house phone. At this time in the morning, they're very unlikely to be out of the house. So I thought, they're very unlikely to be out of the house at this point. So I was like, I'll ring the... Sorry, I'm just trying to check my notes that I'm making sure I've fit everything in. So yeah, so I rang the house, and my dad answered, and I was like, hi Dad. At this point I'd had no contractions, which I thought was really weird, and I also thought when my waters went that all you'd see was baby, but I just literally didn't look any different. I was like, hi Dad, are you and Irene busy at the minute? And then in true dad style I got the whole, oh well, we're in the middle of something at the minute, what's the matter? Which to this day cracks me up, and I wind him up about it all the time, bless him. But I said, oh, well, I kind of need you to come up the house because my waters have broken. And the change in his tone was completely typical of my dad. He kind of just went a bit like, oh. I could feel the blood draining from his face. He was like, oh, let me pass you on to Irene. And I was like, okay. So I could hear him shouting across the kitchen to Irene, her waters are broken, oh my god, oh my god. And I thought, oh bless him, he's really excited. So Irene came on the phone, and obviously she's got children herself, so she knows what to do, but she's also been at the birth of both of her granddaughters, and her second granddaughter is 5 months older than Freddie, so she'd just kind of done it all. So she was like, right, okay, don't panic. I was like, Irene, I'm not panicking. I said, I'm just ringing to say I need you to come to the house because my waters are broke all over the mattress and I don't know how to clean it. She was like, oh, that's fine. So she's like, don't worry, is Mark coming? I said, yeah, Mark's coming over now. At which point Mark has arrived, and he comes in and he looks a little bit flustered, and he was like, are you okay? I was like, yeah. I said, I don't feel any contractions, it doesn't feel any different. I was like, can you finish emptying the dishwasher, because I was in the middle of that as the midwife turned up. I was like, and my toaster's gone cold. So I was like, but don't worry about that. So the dog's just not really that interested in what's going on, bless her. She was just asleep in the corner. And then I thought, I've got to start ringing people. Now at this point, Mark's mum for like the past week had been having her phone on her. Normally in her job, she's a cook, so she has to obviously keep her phone in her locker, but she'd said to them, like, look, my first grandchild's being born soon, I need to know what's going on. So they'd let her have her phone on her, and I remember I rang her and I was like, hi Les, just thought I'd let you know that my waters are broken. And the most the noise that came out of her, she like was so excited, but I could hear her starting to cry, bless her. So I was like, everything's okay, baby's fine, midwife gave me a sweep and the water's broken, everything, I haven't got any contractions yet, blah blah blah. And she said, oh, I'll ring Steve. So we rang around all the relatives, and then I rang my best friend who was in work, who I worked with, and she was like, oh my god, only you could go into like start labour on your due date. So I rang her, she told all of work then, so I had a flurry of messages off my boss and my director and everybody saying, good luck, only you could do this, blah blah blah. Then I rang my sister and told her, and yeah, I kind of rang her and she was like, has the baby come? I was like, no, it doesn't happen that quickly. I was like, but my water broke, so it's kind of in the process of happening. And then we kind of thought, like, because at this point my midwife had left, she'd left before anybody turned up, because she was like, is Mark coming home? I said, yeah, he'll be here in 10 minutes. So she left to go to another appointment, so I was on my own, and I kind of, in the flurry of it, didn't ask the questions that I wanted to ask, because like I didn't know. So both me and Mark were like, well, do we ring the birth centre? So we gave them a ring and said, look, my waters have broken, but I'm not having any contractions, just thought I'd let you know that things are going to start to move, and when would you like us to come in? So she was like, well, obviously you haven't had any contractions yet, so when they start, let us know again, and then time them and the intensity of them and everything. So we were like, all right, okay. And then within about 10 minutes of hanging up on the phone to them, my contractions started. Obviously at this point my dad and Irene had turned up, and Irene and Mark were up here cleaning the mattress, and I could hear the hairdryer going, and she brought all her special lotions and potions, because I was like, we can't afford, we've got a king size bed, so the mattresses aren't cheap. I was like, we cannot afford a brand new mattress if it's ruined, I need to get it clean now. So she cleaned all that, bless her. And then so they were up here, and then my contractions started, so Mark came down, and he was like, are you okay? I was like, yeah, we just need to ring the birth centre back to tell them that my contractions have started, and obviously they'll tell you what to do. So he rang them, and then they said they needed to speak to me. So I was like, right, okay. So they were talking to me, and they were like, no, don't bother, you're still talking through them, so just stay where you are. And I remember thinking, I haven't eaten anything, because the midwife turned up and I was just about to have my breakfast. So I was like, I need to eat something, but I'm not hungry. I kind of think that the whole process of, like, I'm having a baby had taken over and taken away the fact that I was hungry. So I was like, I'm not actually that hungry. But I remember my dad offered me, we had a box of chocolates on the side that work had given me when I finished on my maternity leave. And my dad offered me a box, like he said, just have a chocolate, just have something to give you the energy. So I was like, okay. So I had a chocolate, and then within about, I think, another 20 minutes after we'd rung the birth centre to tell them that I was having contractions, they started to come more. Mark was timing them on the little app that he downloaded, and he was like, yeah, they're coming quite quickly. So he rung the birth centre again and said she's having them every 1 to 2 minutes for like 30 to 50 seconds at a time. So they said, oh, we need to speak to her. So they were speaking to me, and they were like, no, it's you can talk through them, they're not intense enough. And I remember thinking, I'm 25 minutes away from you, this has happened quite quickly. But I was like, obviously, I was like, well, you're the midwife, I don't know what to do. So I was like, yeah, okay. And then they were starting to get a bit more painful, so I was like rocking back and forth on the chair, and like I couldn't, it kind of makes you restless, like I couldn't stay still. And then at this point I remember, bless him, my dad sat around the corner so he couldn't see me, and I just remember, like, he was talking to the dog, and I just remember thinking, oh, his little girl is in pain, so it must be quite hard for him to see that happening, because there's nothing he can do. You know, he is obviously in a similar situation to Mark, in that I'm in pain and there's nothing that they can do. So he didn't want to see that, so he sat round the corner and was fussing the dog and whatever. And then Mark made the decision. This was coming up to about 11ish, 11:15, and Mark made the decision, like, okay. He said the problem is I've got quite a high pain threshold. He's like, you don't know how painful it is if you've got quite, like, my pain threshold is higher than somebody else's, so somebody else could be like, oh my god, I can't take this, whereas I don't really feel a niggle of anything, so I'm quite lucky like that. So Mark was like, right, no, we're going in, I'm taking you in, and if they send us home, they send us home. I'd rather you be there and something happen there than it either happening at home or en route, which would be the worst thing for us. We certainly didn't want to have a baby on the side of the motorway. So Mark I'd had my bags packed since, I think I'd probably had them with Freddie packed since about 25 weeks. Maybe a bit later than that actually. I think 28 weeks I had them packed with Freddie. So Mark grabbed everything, put them in the car, in both cars. So my car and Mark's car, in my car I'd had an Inco sheet on the driver's seat, and in Mark's car I had it on the passenger seat in case anything happened for me when I was going to and from work, or on the weekends, because Mark drives everywhere on the weekends, obviously when we were out and about, but which was good because my waters were still coming out. So we had the Inco sheet on the passenger seat and a big towel. We had all the stuff in the back, and Dad and Irene, who have a key to the house, were like, don't worry, we'll take the, because they were going to have the dog, because obviously I didn't know if I was going to be having to stay in hospital. You know, I didn't know if I was going to be in labour for like 72 hours or whatever. So I was like, right, somebody needs to have the dog. So Dad and Irene were like, yeah, we've got the dog, we'll lock up, we'll tidy up everything, don't worry. You just go have a baby. So we got in the car, and all I can remember is throughout our estate until you get out is speed bumps. And every time Mark went over the speed bump as slowly as he could, bless him, it was just so painful. So I was like, ow! And then we got out of the estate, obviously headed down towards the birth centre. I can't remember much of the car journey. The only bit I remember is just before you turn into the hospital, so you've got like 2 lanes of traffic at traffic lights, and the left lane goes straight on and the right lane goes into the hospital car park bit. And I just remember being at that part of the traffic lights, and I think I was holding on to the arm handle thing and one hand on the dashboard, and I was doing like breathing, and I just remember, you know, when you feel somebody's looking at you. So I looked over, and there was a couple of builders or tradesmen or whatever in the white van next to us, and they just had big gawping eyes and just looked like, oh my god, that woman's having a baby in the car. That's all I can remember. And then Mark pulled in and he parked up and got out the car, and I was having contractions as we were trying to get into the hospital. So I got into the wheelchair, and I just remember thinking, my waters are going like all over the place, like people are going to slip, we need to clean it up. That's all I kept thinking. And then we went up in the lift, because I never understand why maternity wards are like upstairs. It's like, because if in what happened to me, I'm having contractions and stuff, it's like, why have you got to make me walk up the stairs? And like, we went in the lift because I was in a wheelchair and whatever, but we rung the buzzer and Mark was like, she's having a baby. I can't actually remember what he said, but I'd like to imagine that's what he said, because it makes me think of Only Fools and Horses. But we rung the buzzer, they let us in, gave them my notes, popped me on the bed. They were like, right, we're going to examine you. They said, oh, you're 4 centimetres. So I thought, oh, I haven't moved since this morning, because at this point it was coming at 4, it must have been just gone 12. She was like, 4 centimetres, I've seen in your notes that you want water birth, do you want us to start filling up the pool? So I was like, yeah, I want to get in. So she was like, okay, well, we're just finishing up cleaning, because somebody had a baby in there, obviously that morning, so like they're just finishing cleaning. It's like, you just have to wait a little bit and then we'll fill it up, because you're only 4 centimetres. And from when I went and attended like a water birth class, they said that they tend to not let you in until you're 5 centimetres, because it can actually slow things down. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to wait a centimetre anyway, which they usually say on average is like a centimetre an hour. So I was like, oh great, I've got like another 6 hours of this. But I was like, fine. I was like, I don't want any painkillers or anything, I'm okay at the moment. And she was like, oh, go and get you some toast, have you eaten anything? No, I'll go and get you some toast and I remember being told by somebody, not the midwives at the birth centre, but I remember being told by somebody that they don't like look after your husband in terms of like they don't give him food and drink and stuff, they just look after you. So I remember thinking, well, I'm not actually that hungry, but I'll order toast because it's lunchtime and Mark's probably going to be hungry because he hasn't eaten anything. So I was like, yeah, I'll have some toast and a cup of tea. And then they brought that in, and I literally just looked at Mark. I was like, you have it. I was like, I'm not hungry, I don't want it, you have it. So he had that, bless him. And then obviously the time obviously the time passed, but it feels like it happened a lot quicker than what it must have done. Because all I can remember is the feeling of wanting to push and panicking, because when they examined me I was only 4 centimetres. I was like, I'm not ready, so I can't want to push because there's hole, I don't know what other word to use, isn't big enough. I don't want it to tear or anything. I was like, so I was like, panicking, saying like, I feel like I need to push. And the midwife said, that's fine. She said, that's fine. That obviously I didn't get examined again, so she was like, that's fine, just go with your body. I was like, I want to get in the pool. I want to get in the pool. That's all I kept repeating. And Mark said I was like he made me think of like a toddler, which actually reminds me of how Freddie is now. I want to get in the pool. I want to get in the pool. They were like, yeah, you can't get in the pool yet. It's not. We haven't filled it up enough yet. And I said, well, can't I get in and you fill it up around me? So they were like, no, we can't do that. It has to be full in case obviously I get in and the baby comes out all of a sudden. So I was a little bit like, I really want to get in the pool. So at this point I was stood up, but I think I was holding on to the chair, like rocking on the chair and stuff. And then they were like, the pool's ready, in you go. So I remember thinking, like before I started the whole having contractions process, like weeks and weeks ago, I was like, do I want to have like a bikini top or like just a sports bra to go in to the pool with? At the time I didn't care. I literally was absolutely butt naked, everything. I was so hot, I was like, I don't want a bra or anything on, so I was just completely naked, strutting. Well, obviously I wasn't strutting, but like wandering around. They put me into they helped me get into the pool, and it was literally the only thing I can like compare it to, if you haven't felt that experience yourself, is like when you take your bra off at night, or if you've had uncomfortable shoes on all day and you take them off, and that feeling of oh that's better. That's literally how I felt when I got into the water. I was like, this is amazing. So I was in the pool then, and they would just have their little torches and the mirror, and they were checking stuff, and they were like, you're doing fine, just whenever you feel like you need to push, just push. And I remember I kind of like went into my own little zone, so I put my head under the water so that just my face was out, so I couldn't hear anything. I just had the sound of the water in my ears. And so Mark was chatting to the midwives, which I didn't know because obviously I was in the zone. And then I remember just like all of a sudden like a push that felt like my body did a bigger push than it had done previously throughout my contraction. Like a big push that was bigger than any urge to push I'd had throughout the contractions of the day. And his head came out, and the midwife said to Mark, do you want to have a look? You can look if you like. So Mark had a look, and all I can remember is that you had to wait for the next contraction, which can be, I don't know how long the contractions can be when you're actually giving birth, but I think mine were about 20 seconds, 30 seconds, something like that. And he decides to wriggle. That was the most pain, was when he wriggled, because his head's out but his body's still in, and he decides that he's going to go, I'm just going to have a bit of a dance in here. That was uncomfortable. And I remember the midwife said to me, and my ears are still under the water, so I was kind of lip reading, and she was very like muffled, so I could hear what she said, but she was like, he's moving. And I just remember thinking, I know, I can feel it, I know he's moving. And then with the next contraction, obviously his body came out and he was born, and he was born at 3:15 in the afternoon. So my waters had gone at 9:30 that morning and he was born at 3:15. I think my contractions started about 10:30, and they only started to get quite painful at about lunchtime, so it was quite short in terms of some people's labours and stuff. And I remember they handed him to me, they put him on my chest, and I'd asked for delayed clamping. So they put him on my chest, and I remember, because I was so glad I went to the water birth class, because they'd mentioned that quite a lot of babies that are born in water don't cry, because it's more relaxing for them, because they've come from water into water rather than from water into like glaring artificial light with like 20 people looking at them. So they put him on my chest and he didn't make a sound. I know he was okay because I could see him breathing, but I think if I hadn't have been told that water babies tend not to cry, I'd have been a bit like panicked. And I think because he didn't cry like at all, I remember like looked at Mark, and I think the midwife noticed that I was a little bit like, he's not making any noise, and she said, do you want me to make him cry? And that sounds horrible when you when you say it out of context, but I knew she wasn't going to hurt him, so I was like, yeah, okay. And she just tickled the bottom of his foot and he just started crying, and that was it. And we were like, oh, he's here. And then when the cord had stopped pulsating, which is taking the blood from the placenta into him, Mark cut the cord, and they asked me if I wanted to deliver the placenta naturally or if I wanted the injection, and I just said to them, if I have the injection, will it inhibit when I get to go home, when I have to stay in, if I have the injection or anything? And they were like, no. So I said, yep, crack on, give me the injection. So they jabbed me in the leg, and then they started to drain the pool. Mark was having his one-to-one bonding time with Freddie at this point, and they said, when you're ready, you can climb out. So I climbed out, they sat me on a beanbag, and they were like, right, we're going to deliver the placenta. So they did that, and then they asked me if I wanted to look at it, and I was like, yeah, of course I do. Who doesn't want to look at the placenta that your body created and that it sustained the life of your child? Of course I want to see what it looks like. And I would definitely recommend people that haven't seen their own placenta or a placenta, like in real life, not just like on a video or whatever, to do it, because it is so fascinating. And she showed me, she said this side there was like a bumpy side that looked like intestines or brain or whatever. She said this was what was attached to the wall of the womb. She said, and then the other side, the soft side, she said that's what like Freddie was attached to. So I thought, oh, that's really cool. And she said it's a lovely size, and I think they weigh it. I didn't know how much it weighed, but she said it's a lovely size. She said, I can tell you've been healthy throughout your pregnancy because of the colour of it. And they were telling me like they can tell if people have had alcohol, like a lot of alcohol, you know, like alcoholics type of alcohol, not if you have the odd glass, or if you smoke. She said because of the colour of it, and it's almost like I don't know if you've seen on I think they put them on cigarette packets, don't they, like what a lung looks like, and like the yellow fat around a heart of an obese person, it looks like that. And I said it's awful. She said, but yours is lovely, and it's like a deep maroon colour. She said it's lovely. I was like, okay, if you think that's lovely, then woohoo. That was a bit TMI really, wasn't it? But it's definitely fascinating. And then once the placenta had been delivered, I kind of like John Wayne walked back into the room with a bed, and I was allowed to lay on the bed, and I got to cut off Freddie again. And then we tried for him to latch on breastfeeding, and a special nurse came in to try and help, but he was trying to latch on. And she was trying to, this is the only thing that I didn't like, and which is why I was like no with Ivy, because of it really hurt. Like the nurse like grabbed my boob and was like almost trying to squeeze stuff out, and nothing was coming out. And we'd brought little pre-made bottles of milk anyway. And then he went back to Mark for Mark to feed him while I was examined. And I only had to have, I think, 3 stitches, and the midwife who did it said to me that she was really annoyed because the only reason I had to have the stitches was because I was swollen, because he'd been engaged from 28 weeks. So obviously he's been putting pressure down there, so it kind of, and all the blood's going down there, it kind of swollen a little bit, and she said so that had stretched the skin. So she said that's the only reason that I'd torn. She said, which is really annoying, because you did everything. She said you did absolutely brilliantly, but whatever. And then they weighed him, gave him his vitamin K injection, and he was £7.15 and a half. So he was like half an ounce off being £8. And he was born on his due date. So I'm part of the 5% that have babies on their due date. We were allowed to go home the same day, but we didn't get home till about 8:30 at night, because obviously they have to process all the documents. They have to put everything onto a computer, and their computer system was really slow. So although he was born at 3:15, we didn't actually get to leave till about 8 o'clock. And I remember being absolutely terrified and sitting in the back of the car with him. I think I did that for the first 3 months of his life. I wouldn't sit in the front, unless obviously when Mark went back to work after 2 weeks, I had to sit in the front when I was driving, but I didn't like it at all. But that was my birth story with Freddie. It was very positive, and I try and tell my friends that are pregnant, if they ask me, obviously I don't just tell them, but because I find when I was looking for stories when I was pregnant, there weren't very many positive ones. So that's it. So if you liked it, then please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you on the next one. Bye guys!